Great to have you along for the ride. Thanks a lot for stopping by. Really glad to have this man back. He's the House Oversight Committee Chair. He's also District 1 Republican, great state of Kentucky. It is James Comer. Jamie, how are you? Good to see you again.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
I got to ask you right up front, who needs therapy?
Jamie Raskin needs therapy. I mean, he has the worst case of Trump derangement syndrome of anyone in the history of America.
I have to play a little bit of this for those who are watching and listening because this was really something today. Here we go.
This was the genesis of our investigation. How do we understand?
That's just simply not true, but go ahead.
I'll yield to the chairman if you want to take some more time.
No.
Well, you can use
Are
your
you
time.
saying the bank statements are Russian disinformation, that the Bidens took $9,000 from
I
China?
agree. You've been talking about
Tony
bank
Bobulinski
statements for
said
more
it
than a
was
year, but they don't show anything other than there was no crime.
So
What
it's
do your
okay.
bank
It's
statements
okay
show?
for, as Tony Bobulinski said, for China to bribe Joe Biden's family with $9 million.
But that's the lie that's been discredited. I mean, where is your impeachment investigation? If Joe Biden took a $9 million bribe from China, why aren't you impeaching him for that?
Well, who says we're not?
Well, I can invite Mr. Moskowitz to come back in. Do you want to move for impeachment today? Because I thought that was your main agenda item. You said it was the paramount priority of the committee.
No, this is a hearing on China, and you all have an obsession with Russia and Trump. It's disturbing.
We can talk
You
about
need
China
therapy.
and Trump or Russia
You all
and
need,
Trump. He's got
need therapy, Mr. Raskin.
No. You need therapy. You're the one who's involved with.
Everybody needs therapy, it turns out, Representative. The bottom line is this. Jamie Raskin, and I'll say this, you don't have to, but he's an election denier. In 2016, he actually he called into question the electors for Donald Trump. He wanted to overturn the election in 2016. Since then, he wants to take the moral high ground and tell you that you can't investigate what obviously the Biden family has been doing. So in that moment, what's going on, in your mind right then? What is he trying to do?
Well, he's worked so closely with the mainstream media and the Democrat National Committee to try to indoctrinate the American people's minds that the bank statements, the emails, the text messages, and the sworn testimony that we have that prove Joe Biden was the central figure in the Biden family influence scheme. He's tried to indoctrinate in people's minds that that's just not true. That's Russian disinformation. When, of course, it's true. We've got bank records from six different banks. Six different banks filed very serious charges called suspicious activity reports with the Treasury cabinet flagging the Biden family for financial crimes. We have sworn testimony from 3 Biden associates that said Joe Biden knew exactly what his family was doing, and the only business the Bidens were involved in was influence peddling with our adversaries around the world.
It would be pretty simple to have Joe Biden come in and talk to you all, and I know that you invited him. What happened there?
Well, they sent a letter back. Of course, the media had access to the letter before I did and already had run the story saying Comer struck out. But look, this is an investigation of Joe Biden. We gave him every opportunity to come and set the record straight because he knows what we've proven. He knows what the bank records show. He knows that we've uncovered the money laundering schemes. He knows that the IRS whistleblowers told us what the IRS determined about the influence peddling schemes and the fact that the Bidens never paid a penny of taxes on the tens of millions of dollars they took from our enemies around the world, money that Joe Biden and Jamie Raskin still deny ever happened. And we wanted to give him an opportunity to set the record straight. He's chosen not to. He chose not to testify. We even, to try to make it easier for Joe Biden, we sent him questions. Said, if you don't want to come in front of the Oversight Committee, then just answer these questions and send them back. They said no. They said your investigation's over, and it's not over. They'll know when it's over, and I can assure you, when it's over, they're not going to like the outcome.
District 1 Republican, great state of Kentucky. He, of course, the Oversight Committee Chair. It's James Comer. So as I'm watching that back and forth, I don't want to play any more of it, but he almost admits that Joe Biden took the money, but what's the big deal? Donald Trump took $5 million while he was president. There was no payoff to Donald Trump as he was the president for $5 million. This was Donald Trump, the business owner that he actually separated himself from while he was president. The business was making money, as businesses do, for legitimate reasons. Joe Biden and his family, have they presented anything as a reason why they would be getting a dime?
No, and that's what I kept asking Raskin in that 3 minute of tense back and forth. What exactly did the Bidens do to receive the money? What business are the Bidens in? Because he kept referring to money that China paid Donald Trump. Donald Trump owned hotels. He owned golf courses. He owned office space. He owned
Casinos,
social media companies,
right.
casinos. And what do the Bidens have? Nothing. They don't have a legitimate. The media narrative before the investigation was they had an energy company. They don't have an energy company. They don't have any. They never had an energy company.
Right.
They were receiving payments that Tony Bobulinski said under oath were merely bribes to the Biden family. So you can't compare Trump's businesses that Trump talked about and bragged about. Trump was very transparent that he owned the Trump Hotel.
Yeah.
I mean, that he owned the hotel before he was ever president.
His name was on it. Yeah, his name was on it. He couldn't really hide it.
His name's on everything. His name's on everything. But what do the Bidens have? Nothing but bank accounts used to launder money from our enemies around the world that they then sent in incremental payments to 10 different Biden family members. And according to the IRS, they never paid a penny of taxes on it.
Yeah, what jumps out at me is that Jamie Raskin's not a dumb guy. Dan Goldman's not a dumb guy. I'm not sure about AOC, but these people are up there on these panels, and they're asking questions they know are just BS. They know that they're just like diversionary questions. But when AOC says to Bobulinski, did you ever see him commit a crime? And Bobulinski says yes. And she says what? And he says RICO. And she says RICO's not a crime, which of course it is. I mean, I know mafia boss Michael Franzese. I can tell you RICO is a crime. Rudy Giuliani faces RICO charges in Georgia, and he's the guy who basically learned how to use RICO the right way. That is a crime. So in your heart of hearts, Jamie, are they doing this on purpose, thinking that the American people aren't smart enough to keep up? Because these are not dumb people that are asking these questions.
No. People like Jamie Raskin, who's a college professor, and Dan Goldman, who's the heir to the Levi Strauss fortune, and Moskowitz, who's just a little clown. I don't know what else to say about him. But they're very arrogant people. And they believe that if you didn't have a fancy college degree, if you didn't come from a fancy, wealthy pedigree, that you just can't understand. You can't understand the fact that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy, and Joe Biden is the knight in shining armor. I mean,
right.
And every time they attack me, then they run to the White House, and they're like a little dog that you let out the door to go take a poop in the backyard. They come back in and they want a treat. So every time Raskin and Moskowitz and Goldman attack me, then they go to the White House and want to be receive a pat on the head and a little treat for showing their butts on national TV. Look, we tried to have a serious hearing today about China. China's a threat. And one reason I believe China is such a threat is because the Bidens are compromised because of all the money they took from China. What we heard in our committee hearing today was our government doesn't even recognize that China's a threat, much less have a policy and a plan in place to thwart that threat. That's what happens when you have a family that's compromised. That's what happens when we have a family that will not answer simple questions like, what did you do to receive the tens of millions of dollars from our adversaries around the world?
Right.
And I think, China is one of the consequences of having a president whose family's been on the take for decades.
Well, we know that Hunter Biden rode on Air Force Two over to China with his father for no reason. And he ended up leaving with the management ability of $1.5 billion, something like that. From what we understand, if the stories are true, the Secret Service couldn't find him for some of the time he was in China. So we know that nefarious stuff was going on. But here's something that you and I haven't talked about since we last spoke. I was in a space on X. I don't know if you've ever done these spaces. You can go there and a bunch of people, thousands of people can show up and have a conversation about something. And Lev Parnas showed up in the space and he wanted to speak. And we let him speak. This guy wants us to believe, this convict wants us to believe that we should believe nobody other than the Burisma CEO. The Burisma CEO is the guy who says the FD 1023 was no good, the undercover informant was no good, he was taking information from Russia. The person we should believe is the Burisma CEO. And Jamie, this is the guy that hired Hunter Biden for $1 million a year, who had no energy experience, couldn't speak Ukrainian, and it was basically a no-show job. So what do you make of a guy like Lev Parnas? Is he getting his walking and talking papers from the Jamie Raskins of the world? Hey, go in these spaces, go on television, go and say these things, because it's all diversionary. They want us to believe the Burisma guy over a guy who for a decade was a good informant for the FBI.
Lev Parnas is a convicted criminal.
Yeah.
He has played every side on the planet on this issue. He's admitted to being on the take. He's admitted to lying. He's admitted to crimes. And, he doesn't have a whole lot of credibility. With respect to the Burisma owner, this guy's assets were seized by different European countries because of corruption. It wasn't just the United States or the country of Ukraine investigating this guy. This guy was being investigated all over Europe for fraud. And he was, paying Hunter Biden excessive fees while Joe Biden was vice president. Ironically, he cut his fees in half the day Joe Biden left the vice presidency.
Right.
And at the end of the day, this guy is not a credible guy. No one really knows where he's located right now. So, at the end of the day, to believe, we're supposed to believe the owner of Burisma, who by all accounts is someone that's been investigated in multiple countries around the globe for corruption over people like Tony Bobulinski, people like Devin Archer, who knew what was going on at the time. And it's just preposterous.
It is U.S. Representative Jamie Comer, District 1 Republican, great state of Kentucky. I've got to ask you a question that people ask me every time they see me out and about. Why isn't Hunter Biden facing charges for the clear crimes we all saw on his hard drive? His hard drive is filled with him with questionable aged women, with him doing drugs, buying drugs, selling drugs, smoking drugs. This guy is committing crime after crime after crime on a hard drive we know the FBI had since 2019. We know it didn't go through Russia. We know there's no AI on there. We know that it's not made up. This is really him and his activity on his hard drive. Why isn't he facing the music?
I'm the only person leading an investigation of Hunter Biden, other than what David Weiss is doing with lying on a gun application and failure to pay taxes that he received a W-2 on.
Right.
All the other crimes, the only entity in the world investigating him is the House Oversight Committee. And all we're going to be able to do is issue criminal referrals, which we will do. But you mentioned many of the crimes, that we're investigating the financial crimes. You can look on the laptop, and Marjorie Taylor Greene talks about it all the time.
Right.
There are many other crimes on there. There were suspicious activity reports that implicated he was participating in a possible human trafficking ring. He was doing business with an illegal escort service that had illegals in employment.
Right.
That the banks feared were potential human trafficking victims from Ukraine and Russia. I mean, you can't make this up. But, we focused the investigation on the president. We focused the investigation on the financial crimes. And Hunter Biden is the lead suspect in all of the financial crimes. Joe Biden knew about all this. And what's sad, what you see on the laptop, the FBI knew about it. The Department of Justice knew about it. Joe Biden knew about it. And they always covered it up. Someone in the deep state always covered up the bad behavior by Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden to this day is living the high life. He's living in a $40,000 a month penthouse in California. We think he's still driving a Porsche. That's his car of choice. He's not got a job. He's got a big Democrat donor that's paying his bills. He's paying his child support. He's paying his taxes. And, that in itself is a campaign finance violation. How ironic is it that they've got this hush money trial in New York with Trump at the same time that Joe Biden's family's taxes are being paid by a big donor to keep that headline out of the news that the Bidens are delinquent in federal income taxes.
It's also ridiculous. So if I'm taking what you're saying right, you can make criminal referrals, and then Alvin Bragg and Fannie Willis and Jack Smith and Letitia James, they should then take that and start charging people, but they're too busy going after Donald Trump. So you literally can't charge him with anything. You could just make referrals?
Yeah, well, and the referrals will have teeth. And if this Department of Justice refuses to act upon these referrals, then let's hope that we get a new Department of Justice in January and they take them seriously, because the new Department of Justice isn't going to have to conduct an investigation of the Bidens, because we're going to have conducted the most thorough, credible, substantive investigation of the Biden families and their financial crimes of any entity out there. And every I was dotted and every T's crossed, and we're going to have criminal referrals. And I think that that's about as much accountability as any America can ask for, because this family has skirted the law for decades, and nothing's ever happened to them. And I'm doing everything in my ability, and my committee is as well, to see that justice is served.
Chairman of the Oversight Committee in the House of Representatives is James Comer. Let's talk about the Hur tapes. You aren't getting them. You and also Jim Jordan want them, and for some reason Merrick Garland isn't turning them over. Now, do you want them because Biden admits that he knew he had classified information and he tells the author that? Do you want them to show that Biden actually brought up Beau Biden and it wasn't her who brought up Beau Biden's death? Why do you want them?
Well, you can't really tell the extent of how the interview went from a transcript.
Yeah.
Obviously, the interview went incredibly bad for Joe Biden. For Robert Hur to say, he violated the law, but he's in such pitiful mental shape that he's basically a mental invalid, and the jury would have pity on him, so we're not going to charge him.
Crazy.
So we feel like there's more there. Obviously, there's more there, and you can't really get that sense of that much of despair by the Hur writers of the report from the transcript. So we want to see the audio. We want to see the video. And look, the Democrats released the video of the January 6th depositions.
Right.
They said, we wanted transparency. We wanted transparency. Well, they don't want transparency now, or they would turn over those audio tapes. So we expect Merrick Garland to turn over those audio tapes, or I'm 100% in favor of holding Merrick Garland in contempt. I mean, I am sick and tired of this Department of Justice not complying with our lawful congressional request for information. This is information that should be turned over with a simple FOIA request, much less a congressional subpoena.
Well, you literally have oversight, and they're not letting you do oversight. It doesn't make any sense. You are the check and balance on the DOJ. It's Jamie Comer. One last question. Are you going to impeach Biden? And the reason I ask is that Moskowitz and now Raskin keep on daring you. Is it going to happen?
Well, I think he's committed impeachable offenses. I certainly support it. Now, whether our conference supports it or not, it's another question. That's something that we'll see what happens. We saw the Senate didn't take the Mayorkas impeachment very seriously.
Right.
At the end of the day, I want to hold this family accountable. I think criminal referrals and having an attorney general and a Department of Justice that will take these seriously, I think that's the best path forward for accountability. But I'm all for impeachment, and impeachment is still very much on the table in the House of Representatives.
Why do they keep daring you? Because they think you won't? What is that game?
Well, they never thought we would get the votes for impeachment inquiry, because we have 4 or 5 Republicans that run and kiss CNN and MSNBC's butts every week, try to say that they're different. Everybody, we got a handful that want to be the next Mitt Romney over here in the House. And they think, because we can only lose 1 vote. They think, the Republicans don't have the vote. I got a unanimous vote on the impeachment inquiry. And I got all the Don Bacons and the moderates from New York and California to vote for it. I think when they see the evidence of wrongdoing, I think they'll have a different state of mind. And remember, when Mike Gallagher and Ken Buck didn't vote to impeach Mayorkas, which I can't imagine not wanting to hold Mayorkas accountable for the disgrace at the southern border. But we had 3 Republicans that voted against it. 2 of them, they had to announce their retirements within 48 hours because it was so bad at home from people being upset with them. Then within 72 hours, they announced they're leaving Congress early. So there was a backlash from the Republicans that did not take their responsibility seriously to hold people accountable. That's what Republicans want. I think they've kept up with our investigation, the investigation of Mayorkas, the investigation of Biden. They realize there's wrongdoing there. They want accountability. And that's what I'm trying to do. And it's a challenge. It's a challenge. I'm not gonna lie. It's a challenge in our conference. It's frustrating when we have Republicans that vote with Merrick Garland to give the intelligence community the authority to spy on Americans without a warrant. It's frustrating when we have Republicans that vote to fund the Department of Justice at full levels, despite all the cover-ups and the obstruction in this investigation. So there's challenges in our conference. I'm not going to lie. But at the end of the day, I think the people they represent expect people to be held accountable for public corruption. And that's what we've uncovered in this investigation, public corruption.
100%. It's Representative James Comer, the House Oversight Committee Chair. Thank you so much for the time today. Keep up that fight for all of us. I appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.
All right, brother. We're back after this. Stay right here.